As far as our little symbiote guest, I had taken the liberty of buying a large fish tank, which cost more than I'd like it to, but I needed something that would keep the symbiote safe and happy. Remembering Nylea's little dive into that tiny fish tank, and how she didn't like how cold the water was, I took special care to get some heating units from a pet store that would allow me to heat the water, keep it a nice warm temperature. As I thought about it, I even remembered the water that was in the spaceship being rather warm. I was a little more caught up with the whole kidnapping and aliens thing at the time, so I didn't really note it. But our little friend seemed fairly happy in his little tank. While I was at the pet store, Nylea actually gave me some advice, telling me that symbiotes were, in essence, still living things while they weren't bonded to a host, and that they felt more comfortable in environments where they had somewhere to feel at home. She said that naturally symbiotes originally came from bodies of fresh water with lots of plants, so I did my best to buy some varied underwater plant life that I could put into the tank. Nylea even suggested that I get some company for the little guy, that symbiotes could telepathically communicate with more than just sentient beings, that if I got the right kind of accompanying fish, they could actually keep the little guy company. They could communicate with one another. A very basic level, but still. So I got some cleaner fish, fish that had the job of keeping the tank clean and tidy, and some other equipment to keep the tank running optimally. I ended up shelling out more money than I really wanted to, but these symbiotes were living beings, and sentient ones at that. I didn't want them to feel like prisoners. I wanted them to have somewhere they felt comfortable, at least until I could find them a suitable host. Someone that was willing to bond with them, and that wasn't a murderous psychopath. According to Nylea, she communicated with the little guy, and luckily enough, he hadn't been too damaged. He hadn't yet started to pick up on the lunatic's psychological behavior. So he was, in essence, still just a kid. Happy, playful. He was a little scared when Nylea removed him from his host, but after he talked to her a bit, he began to feel more comfortable. And soon he was swimming around the fish tank, making friends and claiming his own little spot to rest in. As I also got some nice little set pieces for the fish tank that would allow symbiotes to tuck themselves away. Regardless, I hoped they would be happy with the setup. It cost me a pretty penny to get a fish tank that size. It's a 50-gallon tank, not for the faint of heart, and the very expensive filter I got to make sure that it was absolutely the best situation possible for them just added to the price tag. But the water was clean, their fish companions were healthy, so everything should be good. I had actually learned some other things about the liquid steel from Nylea. For example, there's a difference between the armor's ability to absorb impact force and its ability to absorb energy sources. Because the two are different, the armor has to treat them different. The liquid steel has to treat them different. When it comes to energy, things like heat from fire or sunlight, or electricity, or even other types of energy like plasma, the armor, rather than trying to deflect this energy, simply focuses on absorbing it more effectively and then displacing it, spreading it as far out as it can, within limitations, of course, which I got a first-hand view of from my chokehold position in that Goliath's grasp when the armor started to crack. Apparently, that's not something that just fixes. Once someone breaks the threshold of the armor, and it begins to actually take damage, it's because the cells that the material is made up of have reached their absolute limit, and at that point start to break down, just like any other cell that you subject to different forces like heat or impact. They have a threshold. Just because it's exceptionally high doesn't mean it can't be reached. And once this happens, it damages the cell. And just like any normal living cell, it dies. After taking account of the liquid steel that I had used on the night in question, I found that I was nearly an ounce lighter than I was when I went, meaning about an ounce worth of the liquid metal cells died off, burnt themselves out, defending me against those attacks, which means the more damage they take, the more liquid steel I'm likely to lose. Luckily for me, the threshold for losing these liquid steel cells was exceptionally high, but that doesn't mean it can't be done. So I have to be wary of how much damage I take, what I'm subjecting the liquid steel to, because at a high enough capacity, I'll start to lose them. On a better note, the news had been continuing to play my little showdown, basically non-stop. And not only that, but it had made its way to the internet, and the videos of the heavy metal night were taking over. People all around the world were becoming obsessed with New Star City's new superhero. It was actually pretty awesome. I'm not gonna lie, my ego definitely enjoyed it. Pages flooded with comments about how awesome I am, people wanting to know how my powers work, discussion boards filled with people talking about every facet of me, who I am, what my powers actually are. Just countless people with different ideas and opinions about it, and almost all of which were actually positive. There were very few that had anything negative to say, but right now I was focused on training. I had finally patched up, so I got to lifting some weights. Surprisingly, I was able to lift nearly 800 pounds without much effort. I mean, it felt a little difficult, like I was maxing out, but 800 pounds as a max is just ridiculous. At least for bench pressing. For weighted squats, it was more like 1,400. In fact, the weights I had to lift were so heavy that I couldn't use a normal rod made of regular steel. It would just bend. I ended up having to use liquid steel to make a rod capable of holding that much weight without bending, and had started a vigorous workout routine. I had been going for nearly 3 hours now, and man did I work up a sweat. I wasn't one for working out, but with doing superhero work, putting on as much strength as possible could only benefit me, especially considering that the effects amplify, and I'll need it when I'm facing other symbiote users. Being more physically fit than them could actually prove the difference in a life or death combat situation. It was during this little workout session that I began to hear a knock at my front door, and based on the timing, I could only assume that it would be one person, Ned, fresh off of work and ready to show me his new designs. To be honest, I really couldn't wait. I was feeling pretty amped, hoping that this new armor layout would be just what I needed. Get back to speed without sacrificing all my defense. For all I know, Ned might have found a way to work some other things in too. Who knows? He is pretty obsessed with my abilities, so it would be nice if he found a way to work those in too. I had collected another 3 days worth of liquid steel, so my amount had increased, which was good. Hopefully I'd be able to make this new suit of armor, and still have enough left to spare. As I walked to the door, the only thing I could wonder was what Ned had actually come up with, and hope it was good.